All right, everybody ready? Yep. All right, I'm gonna call the policy committee meeting on April 14th to order. And Jory, if you could do a roll call, please.
Hamaji.
Here.
Hines. Here. Lee.
Here.
Topper's excused.
Thank you. All right, are there any changes to the minutes for March 10th? Yes?
There's a name misspelled, and I just made that correction.
Okay.
It's under item 7, new business. And it's like number 3, like examples of existing plaques for review. The first one says one for Joe Max. That name should be Joan, Joan, Marks, Marx.
Oh, very good.
Aside from that.
All right, thank you. And residents forum, are there any speakers, Jory?
We have one.
Okay.
I will read that. Residents have up to 2 minutes to address the committee. The committee does not directly answer questions posed by speakers during the residents forum, but it does hear the viewpoints and ideas presented, and members do consider them as they act during the meeting. Speakers must conduct themselves with proper decorum consistent with community standards that would not be offensive to a reasonable person, as determined at the sole discretion of the GRF board. Participants may not engage in personal attacks, threats of any kind, or any other disruptive behavior. Speakers violating these rules may be expelled from the meeting and precluded from speaking at future meetings as determined by the board. And our resident speaker is Mary England.
That sounds like the timer.
I'll be quick.
It is. I would like to comment on the GRF policy.
Could you give your?
Oh, I'm Mary England, 1200 Fairlawn Court, number 8. And I would like to comment on the GRF policy 602.0, point number 3 in the policy, which I will quote, that programming priority is given to community information and Golden Rain Foundation Board News. Policy needs to include new language and add that programming priority is given to mutual business coverage as well. Why include mutual business coverage? The trust agreement references that GRF operates for the use and the benefit of the mutuals in the following sections of the trust. In recitals C2, 3, 4, and 5, and sections D and 5. So I recommend that GRF Board News is not the only governance entity to get priority. Mutuals must be given priority as beneficiaries of the trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
No, that is all.
All right, I don't have a chair's report, so I think we'll move on to item 6A. John, do you want to give us an overview of that?
Sure. This is the same memorial plaque wording for Judy Appleman. The group actually sent a revised wording that we now believe is more in line with the new policy. The policy committee is just approving the wording on the plaque, and the GRF board will approve the entirety of the project, like the location and the materials going in. So the new wording is in honor of Judy Appleman, Pillar of B'nai Israel, and NCJW.
All right, any comments about that? Are we in favor of the change?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it, yeah. Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Jory, can you do a roll call?
Yes, Hamaji.
Someone,
Wait,
oh, I'm
wait,
sorry,
wait,
sorry, you're ready.
I'll make
Okay.
a motion
Motion.
a motion to recommend the board to approve the memorial plaque wording for Judy Appleman.
And I second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Now, if you would.
All right, Hamaji.
Yes?
Hines.
Yes,
Lee.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, John.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thanks.
That was easy.
Excuse John here.
Wow, 5 minutes.
Let him get back to real work.
Yeah, really. Okay, we'll move on to item 6B, and that's regarding the residents forum. Deborah, can you give us that overview?
Absolutely. So I've shared it on the screen. So to give you a little background, at the last board meeting, March 27th, the board had been introduced to two separate versions. One, a committee advisory version of guidelines and for GRF board meetings. Two separate, and then two separate forms, the resident forum form slips to complete. During that meeting, there was a lot of changes that happened, and during that meeting, there was some proposed language to add content, to address certain things, and I said, this really needs to be one holistic document. One, not only to provide a singular guideline for residents and readers, but also as a page on our new website potentially. So it's a one-stop shop, gives everyone guidelines. And so today, I'm gonna review with you some changes I've incorporated along with the requests made both at the previous policy meetings and at the board meeting, and try to adapt. And then I'm gonna also introduce to you a suggestion about showing you what the City of Walnut Creek Council uses as their written submissions. So just to kind of go over this document, I have addressed, in this top portion, it really delineates, here, let me just expand that a little bit more. The request to provide clear context as to where you can pick up one of these resident forum slips or these guidelines, and this would be included on that website as well. It provides a clear overview of the GRF board meetings. So it's giving a clear snapshot of where they can go and submit these resident forum requests, a schedule, the resident forum slips right here. It's showing that at the entrance of the meeting room, the GRF board office, or online for download and printing, and providing that link, how to get there. And then it provides overview of the in-person public commentary of who to give the slip to, if you're speaking on behalf of another resident. Also the public comment rules that we've had traditionally in the past of the 2 minutes and the conduct and decorum rules. Zoom participation gives clear guidelines of the 2 p.m. day prior for the signed consent form. And then the email and written submissions. So at the previous meetings for the policy committee as well as the board, I was asked to really clarify the timing of these submissions and the word limit to read aloud in case someone read these aloud for somebody, right? And this is where I'm gonna pause for a moment, because right here at the top, it says residents may submit written comments to be read aloud during the meeting, or if not intended for public reading, share with the full board or specified committee. Now, while I did clear that up as requested during the board meeting where I said, in your subject line, write letter to the board or resident form to the board, I'm gonna show you the City of Walnut Creek. Shared. So I don't know if you can see this. It says written public comments, right? You can submit them to that email address on this website. Sorry, I can't increase this font. There we go. And then right here, it goes into regular city council meetings, written comments received at least 2 hours prior to the scheduled start time of the city council meeting will be provided to the city council itself, as well as posted to the city websites, perhaps in their agenda packet, as part of official record. So that's everything preceding 2 hours. I said, and then it goes on to say anything 2 hours leading up to the start of the meeting, it will really be forwarded on to that city council. So what I'm proposing is for you to really look at what comments that I've combined from both the policy committee and from the board suggestion to perhaps just take into consideration the time involved for the resident advisory committees chairs that will have to take on this duty, as well as potentially, I don't know yet, but just think about this, potentially strain staff to have to read all these emails that may be written and submitted, right? And trying to decipher whether or not those particular items are for just general or for the resident forum, right? There will be a learning curve, I'm sure. Let me see here. Going back to. Okay, and then going further, going back to the committee's request for clear enunciation and definement of the emails proposed in the GRB email account, those were outlined. And then right here where it says high volume topics. So during the meeting, Dwight mentioned there would be sometimes contentious items, right? So this is just my suggestion. I had nothing to pull from really. So I just said if you have more than 10 comments submitted on the same topic, only the first 10 submissions will be read aloud, right? So those emails that say, please share these during the meeting, either with policy or to the board. All remaining comments will be included in that agenda packet for board and committee review for public record. That is completely up to this committee to rewrite or propose changes. And then the rest is a comprehensive overview of how to watch GRF meetings and how to access meeting agendas. And now I leave it back to the committee for suggestions or feedback.
Okay. So the last topic that you covered, the 10 submissions, that's only for receipt of emails.
It is, yes, it's in the email section for the submission of emails to request reading aloud during either board or committee meetings.
Okay. All right. Jake.
First of all, I like the whole thing.
Yeah, it's
I-
great.
I
Yeah.
agree with it.
Having it one way.
There's a couple of places I like to add a few words here and there just to make the sentence a little more clear, I guess. Is that okay? So if we can start on page 6B2. 6B2. Public comment rules. You guys see that section? And the first sentence says that residents may represent only one other resident. Okay, so I think we need to clarify that. Okay, so a resident speaker can come in, can speak for themselves, speak for another person, or speak for him or herself and another person, right? Do we agree to that? So so right now I read the sentence, it suggests to me that a resident may only represent one other resident. I would like to add in, and I'm using my words, you can write differently. A resident may represent himself, herself. Okay, I gotta find it. A resident may represent himself, herself, and or only one other resident. So it gives the yourself, the other resident, or both. So it's just to clarify. Okay. The second thing I want to clarify is Zoom participation. A little bit further down. Okay, so when a resident speaks on Zoom, their voice can be heard, the voice can be recorded, and then it can be rebroadcast. We ask people who are physically there to sign a consent form because their voice is heard, their voice is recorded, and their voice is rebroadcast. Do we need to ask the Zoom speaker to sign the same consent form since their voice is being recorded and being rebroadcast and being heard?
Good question. I wouldn't know how to get a hold of them.
I don't know.
So if I could answer that from the TV standpoint, right, because we do release forms all the time, it's about actually seeing the person, it's not the voice. So if you use the same philosophy that we use with Rossmore TV, it would be fine on Zoom because we're not showing them. We're not showing their actual face.
Yeah, but in the consent form, it says your voice and or. It implies in consent form that it's your voice and or. That's what it says in the consent form. It's voice and or. You
The
know,
lawyers kind of covered us on everything for the consent form, but the actual legal requirement. So for example, like we have a narrator on a video that we have. we don't have to have a consent form for his voice.
Okay. then one more-
So, yeah, that would just be, like I said, the lawyer likes to cover
Well, no, I
everything
understand.
broadly.
Okay. Yeah, no, all I'm trying to do is cover bases.
Nope, agreed.
Okay, so now the issue is that on Zoom, I identify myself as James Lee and I live at blah, 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 and then I talk. Does that now identify the person who's talking?
Yes, it does.
So, I mean, it goes, I don't know the answer. It just popped in my mind as I was going through the pattern. So maybe something somebody can check on.
That one we'll need to check. I'll check with George. and
Yeah.
Come back and let everyone know.
Because, you do have an identity, but, okay.
Mhm.
I know the city of Walnut Creek has discontinued Zoom.
For Zoom speakers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the issues.
Because of the issues they had.
Right, not related to
Oh,
this.
oh, yeah, because they make all kinds of crazy comments.
Right, but they didn't have them sign.
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah, I will check.
Yeah, it's just my, from reading the consent form and then also realizing this.
I'll check.
Okay, let's drop down to,
Just one more question
Oh,
in that
sure.
area, and then I'll have you go back.
sure,
So Zoom participation, if someone wants to speak for someone using Zoom,
yeah.
you're gonna have a tally, or the committee person will have a tally of who submitted the consent form.
They would be given a printout,
Okay,
say if it's golf, right?
Mhm.
And they have their own secretary there, and we don't typically attend. If that's the case, and that's Jory's committee, she would print that out and give it to whoever reads aloud the resident.
so you've already saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
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 so
since
you've
you
got
raised
the
that-
logistics.
Since you raised that, the question was raised is how do I get them to sign a consent form, a Zoom person? But yet we're asking a person on Zoom, if they represent another person
Mhm.
to send a consent form. If we require them to do that, why can't we require the person speaking for themselves to send in a consent form? I mean, you can't have it one way or the other.
We could, if that's what you want.
Oh, no, but I'm saying that,
That would cover all of the bases
yeah,
if you plan to speak, you
Or
have to
someone else.
submit your consent
Yeah.
form by 2 PM the day prior, just like everybody else.
Right. yeah, because if we're saying that you have to do it for, you speak with someone else,
And if you're on Zoom,
You're-
you're
you're
pre-planning.
planning to speak for that person, so it's no different than I'm planning to speak for myself the day before. That's just my logic, so it's probably doable if there's a need to do it.
I just feel like that's extra.
I don't know.
I
I don't wanna make it more complicated.
Oh, I agree with you, but again, I don't want to fall into the legal issue here.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah, so,
How about this? Let me know if this works for you guys. Let me reach out to Jeff Beaumont.
okay, reach out.
See,
see.
here's what our consent form says. Here's what we were previously told by our previous legal counsel. And this is our ideas. And also to go around this at all, would a, submission prior to that work? Or do we need to, can we forego it?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's fine, yeah, just
to
yeah,
clarify it.
yeah, and just be guided by legal,
Mhm.
because, if legal say, yes, you have to do it, well, then
Yeah,
it's probably doable.
well, and if legal says, yes, you have to do it, you could probably amend that third bullet point saying if representing self and or another resident get the form.
Yeah, I will.
So it'd be a pretty easy change.
Right,
Absolutely.
yeah, because otherwise, the resident, well, how come I speak for myself, I don't have to do it, if I speak for
Right.
James Lee, why do I
Right.
have to do it?
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's kind of,
So I think part of that too, James, because I verify the identity of everyone that emails in a letter, right? Because I have you could put your
Oh, yeah.
neighbor and
Oh,
his
right.
address
Yeah,
down
yeah.
very easily, right?
Right.
So I think part of that would be if you have somebody who's reading out an email, you want verification from the resident that they actually are representing you, so that you can't just arbitrarily decide to slap anybody's name or
Right.
address on it.
yeah, just
So that
claim.
might be the difference between why you would need it for representing someone versus needing it for yourself.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, yeah, but again, I just don't know, it just popped in my head.
It's a valid thing.
It's valid. Well, and it's Zoom, which is a whole new
Yeah.
field
well,
anyway.
And who knows, pretty soon there'll be AI, right? AI's gotta sign the form.
What else do you have, Jane?
Okay, 6B3,
Right.
Okay, the second bullet says, if a comment exceeds 2 minutes, the reading will stop after 2
I'm
minutes.
sorry, where are you?
Okay, on top of 6B3,
Clarifying?
Yeah, well, at the very top.
yeah, there's
All right,
a
if a
second
comment.
bullet. It says, if a comment exceeds 2 minutes, the reading will stop at the 2-minute mark. Can I just for clarification, can I just say, if the comment being read aloud exceeds 2 minutes, the reading will be stopped at 2-minute mark?
Sure.
Okay, just to
That's
clarify.
good.
Okay, and then, and this may change, but go down to the high volume topic. Again, on 6B3, about halfway down, it says high volume topics. If more than 10 comments are submitted on the same topic, only the first 10 or whatever number we may sign on will be read aloud. Can I just add in, if more than 10 resident forms comment, because not, you can send all kinds of comments, right? You may get 100 comments, but you may only get 3 that are resident forms. So I just want to clarify, we're talking about resident forms comments, the ones that are being read.
So
There really
first
wouldn't
you
be
have
any
to,
other comments, though.
Pardon?
There wouldn't be any other comments other than residence forum comments.
Well, people are sending letters to the committee and resident forms to the committee, so they're all comments.
so this is a good time to
Yeah.
decide if you would like to mirror the city of Walnut Creek's methodology of giving that only 2 options, right? Up until 2 hours before, it would be, addressed in the, attached to the packet. And then anything from 2 hours up to the start of the meeting will be forwarded to the city council. So those would be on record, right? But they wouldn't be read aloud. So those 300 comments on the contentious items, you have to decide, because I think this high volume is really, that was Mr. Walker's concern and suggestion, is to develop a high volume. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. I don't foresee this happening very often whatsoever. But what happens if there's something golf and walkers, right, in the golf group, right, the golf advisory? Can you see Burke and can you see his secretary handling this? Think about that with aquatics and fitness, the audit committee, the finance committee. Because these are across the board as well,
Right,
so
right.
holistically.
Okay, so
And someone
are you
has their
willing to
hand.
draft that for us to see?
So,
See it in
There's
a
somebody raising their hand and
procedure?
I can't tell who.
Oh.
It's
right.
me, it's Ted Bentley.
Yes. To let them know that they can
You
speak.
can speak now.
Can you hear me?
What board member is that?
Okay. Oh,
Can you,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the question I have on that particular topic is, if more than 10 comments are submitted on the same topic, you're gonna read those first 10. That's 20 minutes a time on one topic. Do we need to just be able to, would it be possible to read one letter and say, we have 9 or 15 more letters on the same subject, since they'll all be shown to the board anyway?
Well, in my opinion, I think you need to address some of them. I don't think you can just sum it up.
Yeah, I would agree with
You have
that.
to give a chance. to
I would agree
give
with
an
that.
opinion.
They may sound similar, but people may voice some other issues in addition to that. And not only that, right, but we wanna hear, in my opinion, I like to hear what residents have to say, and I like to hear more than just one.
Right. There may be just a facet. in
Yeah,
each
there's
one.
little slight differences in what they say, so.
Thank you, Ted.
I don't know if 10 is the right number, but
Okay. All right, so back to the city procedure.
Would you like me
Well,
to share
what
it
do you guys
again?
think about the
So-
city
so-
procedure?
I'm not quite sure I understand. The city, help me if I'm misconstruing this. The city policy is they will accept email submissions up to 2 hours prior to the meeting. Is that correct?
Mhm.
So as opposed to ours, which
2
What-
o'clock.
so all
It's
they
2
do-
o'clock the day before.
Right,
So are you
so-
proposing to change it to,
They do not read aloud any of the comments.
It's just
And
putting
any-
it in
Oh,
the
okay.
packet.
Any shape or form, so they have two options, right?
okay,
So they adhere everything 2 hours prior, leading up to 2-hour mark, right? And they attach it to, it says online for public record, but I'm guessing it's the agenda packet.
Yeah.
We can provide clarification, so they would attach to the agenda packet, right? And anything from the 2-hour amount up until the start, they don't attach it to the packet. They just forward them without a response to the full city council for review.
okay,
And it would be
afterwards.
after the fact, after the meeting. And that kind of happens now anyways, as we're preparing for the
Mhm.
meetings anyways, because our meetings start at 9 AM, right? If we, as staff, if we got them 2 hours before, it'd be 7 AM. I'm just, logically thinking these through, but, so that's there. They also have a 30-minute time bracket that they do on non-agenda items. But most of our items are on point if they're the contentious item. They come to the meeting about that line.
I think putting the email residence forms in the packet is fair. I mean, it gives everybody the option to have their opinion printed and viewed with the agenda. So it can simply handle that. like,
Absolutely, there is no size limit on attachments. The only problem is if you want to print it out.
well,
Right.
But otherwise, no, it's fine.
But every board member looking at the packet would have all that
Right.
information.
Yeah, it would be
right in
under the
front of
resident forum line item. We would just attach all those there.
Now, some of our meetings start earlier in the morning. Do you want to specify 2 hours, business hours?
Well, they could hand it in the next, the
Yeah,
day
because
before.
the 9 AM
Sure.
um,
Which would qualify.
up until 2 hours prior, so 7 AM, and Jory doesn't get in until 8:30, and she has 9 AM meetings.
So we just-
I'm just trying
we
to
have the
deal with the
day before.
logistics. I think the day before
Yeah,
is,
I would keep it,
yeah,
I mean,
So 2 PM the day before.
yeah. I would,
Yeah, so you have time before the end
give
of the day.
some time, yeah. Otherwise, it's
It's the
not.
same premise.
yeah, it's
So
the
the
same
same
principle, but, just.
So are you all interested in me to draft something along the lines of the cities?
Okay, so,
The 2 PM day prior, or are you wanting to discuss this more?
okay, so I guess my question is that if we go with the city's guidelines, does that mean that submitted emails will not be read? I guess that's the question.
Correct.
Then,
You'll be able to read them.
but then.
Well, but they won't be read aloud.
What we read aloud, I'm just thinking, would residents be interested in hearing other residents' opinions on things? We have resident forums where people come in and they could make their comments that affects the whole community. Some people may not be able to come because they're on vacation, where it is, and they may want to say something, but I'm just putting us out there because we value feedback, we value input from the community. Do other residents value input from fellow community members?
Absolutely.
So,
This isn't set in stone.
right, no, I recognize that, yeah.
So we could do a pilot, which I've learned from the marketing task force group.
A pilot program, I like it.
Is to see how this works with the email submissions as it's written,
Okay,
right?
all right, and then,
And then if it becomes too overwhelming for staff to print them out in the morning to get them to the advisory committee, I mean, the two, we can figure out the high volume topics, right? We can give it 2 PM if you want me to, up until, give it some guidelines,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I think that for the high volume ones,
I think you put a limit on how many can be read during a meeting.
right,
Yeah,
this is
I mean, I think
helpful
that's-
for all parties, this high volume,
Absolutely.
but we can move back away from the city council if you like, and just
Yeah.
go, I can address that later if that becomes a problem. on our end.
I would prefer that, because I think ours is more inclusive, and I would always support that.
Community.
Yeah, community driven.
I just want to give a plug for the way the city does it because it's very informative to the reader of the agenda to have all those opinions right in front of them in print.
Oh, yeah, it might not
And
be.
if
okay with
you're,
that. I'm
like,
okay with
think
that.
about board members going into the board meeting with all that information. You're not surprised by having someone come and speak.
Mhm.
You have their opinion way in advance. And, well, depending, but it is in advance and it does kind of prepare you.
Well, it gives us more input.
More
And I agree with you that it's very valuable to have that, if we can have that in the board packet, I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think residents are gonna like this because it's another option for them to.
Yeah.
give an opinion. That's fairly simple. You don't have to be a problem.
Yeah. So if we're gonna, read emails during the resident forum, do we need to, during this, trial, what do we want to call it, do we want to put in, how many emails can be read? Go with the 10. So that's 20 minutes.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay, so,
Okay.
but then are we still gonna distinguish, are people gonna come in and say, the header is gonna be resident form email versus just a comment email?
So I'm sorry to
Are we gonna
confuse
distinguish?
you, but these are the individuals that want to come and to submit to be read aloud,
Right, so,
right, by email.
right, so it's gonna, so the email
And
header
it
is gonna say.
should hopefully have one of those specified requested formats of resident form, right? Whether that's for board or committee.
Right. And that's why I'm suggesting we put it in more than 10, if more than 10 resident form comments are submitted.
Something like
clarify.
that, yeah.
I have added that.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
I've inserted that,
Okay,
definitely.
thank
I
you.
will add that.
yeah. Otherwise, you get 500 just emails of
And we're keeping
everything.
it to 10, we're good with 10?
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, okay, yeah, those were the comments I had on this topic, and I'll wait for Anne's topic and any comments.
All right.
Thanks for the warning.
What about you, Cheryl? Do you have any comments?
No, no additional comments.
Okay, let me just see if James hit all mine. I think it's okay. Okay, at the top of 6B2, you give in the first bullet that's listed at the very top, you give the format of getting the permission from the person to speak. And that's good, but in other points where that's addressed, I think you can say, as indicated on the slip.
So under Zoom,
Like under to speak on Zoom, yeah.
if representing another resident, and then you want me to in like pren or in,
Just to emphasize that on the form, you have to get that information.
okay.
It happens a couple of times. And then, okay, we call the slip, the residence form slip, but there's no title on the form, so I just wondered if you could add that above what's already there.
So instead of this GRB forum liability release and request to speak at advisory committee or GRF board meeting, that's a pretty big mouthful, right?
Yes, it is, it's a pretty big title.
How
But I mean, you
about,
could put residence form slip at the top, because that's
How
how we,
about we-
that's how we refer to it.
how about resident forum slip for GRF board meeting or for committee meeting?
Yeah, I like that better. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was getting way too wordy.
It is, isn't it? Good idea, guys.
Thank you again.
Yes,
Putting this all
yes,
together.
really.
It's a
We're
lot.
making it way more
Thanks,
complicated, but I think it's gonna work fine once we get it going. All right, so this was just procedural, we don't need a motion.
No, I'll bring it back next.
Okay,
So
Next month.
it comes back to us next month.
Yes.
Okay.
all right, thank you. All right, any other comments on that?
Good with that.
We'll move on to item 6C, and Ann Peterson, if you could give us that overview.
You bet. So This was in front of the policy committee last year. We started in August. It went all the way through winter. There were several residents who asked that we look at the prohibition clause in the policy to discuss whether or not to lift the religious and political topics. And the committee had decided that they wanted to stay with the policy with one exception, which was to remove the word bipartisan. That way it would cover all political topics. When it reached the board for the second reading, we were asked to bring it back to policy. There was some concern that if we, even without removing the word bipartisan, just having that there could limit the ability to have city council members come to the meeting to give updates, or it would restrict politicians from participating in town halls that we then broadcast. And so we were asked to relook at the change for the policy to try to find a way to make sure that we are safeguarding so that that programming is still allowed. So the proposed change now is the channel does not accept programming on religion and politics, except when the latter includes elected officials or their staff who are participating in nonpartisan or non-election campaign meetings or events. There's a reason to emphasize the non-election campaign. Just a reminder, we are a community access channel, and the FCC requires that community access channels not engage in anything regarding elections or campaigns. If we do, it triggers a clause in the FCC that then says we must give equal access time to all candidates. And that would be very prohibitive with the size of our staff. Especially some elections can have upwards of 12 to 14 people, and having to give the same amount of time to each of those on a campaign or election matter would be very, very difficult. We want to be sure to maintain our community access channel status, because just a reminder, if we don't, it costs about $1 million to broadcast on the air per year. So that's why we want to be community access.
Yes.
So any questions on the proposed change?
All right, James, you have comments?
I like it. That's my comment.
But
I like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would
That's my
agree with
comment. I
that.
like it.
I think it does a really good job of capturing when we're gonna have an elected official speak, example, at the board meeting, or, you know, when we've had the insurance commissioners, staff speak at town halls. So I think you did a great job.
I agree, but I have a comment. So, the sentence, the channel does not accept programming on religion or politics. And
it's both.
Both.
We don't do religion
All right.
and we don't do politics.
And then I think, I would put I would like it just to be very specific in a, worded in a positive way. So instead of continuing on with that latter half of that sentence, I'm asking, putting a period after politics and then having a sentence, broadcasts of elected officials or their staff who are participating in nonpartisan or non-election campaign meetings or events is permitted. Just like a positive statement versus tagging it on as almost an afterthought with that other statement.
So the only thing I'd want to include in there is that we're talking about politics, just in case you have a
We're talking about
politician
the-
who's a religious leader who
Oh,
wants to come
jeez.
in. I know that sounds crazy, but
No,
you
it's
gotta
not.
cover for everything. You'd be amazed at how many people can find a loophole. So as long as we're making it specific to politics, yes, I think that change would be fine.
You guys have anything? You want to see it in print?
No, I mean, I'm trying to visualize it here. So what you would say is, you wouldn't use the words except. You'd say period, elected officials or their staff who are participating in nonpartisan or non-election meetings or events shall be permitted. Is that what-
Or is what-
Leanne had I think the way you had it was political programming that includes elected officials or their staff or participating in nonpartisan or non-election campaign meetings or events shall be permitted.
I would move the word political though, because if we're having a town hall on fire and you have the insurance commissioner, the subject isn't political.
Well, that would be fine, but then they would not have been exempt under the policy anyway. They would have been allowed. There would not have been that exception. It's just to say that when you're specifically dealing with political programming, this is when it would be allowed. This is when it's permitted. So if they're talking at a fire town hall and has nothing to do with politics, they're welcome to come in regardless,
Okay,
even under the old policy.
because I think that was one of the concerns.
Mhm.
Well, you cover that example by saying non-election.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem making it a positive statement as long as it captures the intent, so,
Looks good to me.
yeah. I mean,
Want me to read it again?
yes,
So just for
please.
sure, everyone? Okay, so political programming that includes elected officials or their staff who are participating in nonpartisan or non-election campaign materials or events shall be permitted.
Okay, good.
Any other comments? All right, thank you, Ann.
So you'd have to make a motion to send it back to the board, since
Yes.
it's a policy change for first reading.
Okay,
I move that it goes back to the board for
Okay, Cheryl.
first reading.
Second.
James second. And any other comments?
No.
Jory, can you do a roll call?
Hamaji,
Yes,
Hines,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Okay.
thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move on to new business regarding the audit committee, some changes to their charter. Jeff, if you could tell us about that.
So this item is coming to you, we were directed for the policy committee to consider in addition to the charter for the policy or for the audit committee to include some oversight and monitoring of the audits performed for the our mutual clients. This is a little bit of a delicate one because it is more oversight in terms of monitoring the timelines and process. It has nothing to do with recommendations on auditors or on any elements within the audit. It is simply the performance of GRF's duties to provide audits per basically statutory requirements. So it's a check-in to make sure that GRF is on track with what they are under contract to provide, not actually delving into the audits themselves. Right. So they don't, the audit committee typically will get into the very specifics of the GRF and trust audit. That's not the case with this one. It is strictly providing oversight of the process. So the addition states, monitor the audit timelines, progress, and reporting based on GRF's duties as property manager for the mutual corporation's audits conducted by the independent external auditors hired by each mutual, ensuring timely communication to the GRF board regarding key milestones, delays, and outcomes relevant to the mutuals. So they're to report on any issues in compliance with the requirements to deliver those audit statements.
Okay,
Seems fine.
that seems reasonable.
Question? So basically, the committee would look to Todd for the information. That everything's moving, along.
Correct. So I would envision the CFO to provide a oversight of which mutuals are scheduled for reviews or for full audits and the timeline for those, and then report leading up to where they are on completion of those, what actions are needed by finance, by the mutual, and so forth. And then if there is any delays or issues,
Why not?
report on those in advance.
So they don't interact with the mutual boards or anything like that? in terms of getting this
The
information.
audit committee would have no oversight over the actual financials or the selection of the auditor
Okay.
or actually the audit itself. That's the responsibility of the mutuals audit or the mutuals treasurers and boards.
Oh, no, but would they go to mutual and say, hey, so tell me how's it going, or is everything online, you know?
I would say that would be
Basic.
kind of at the discretion of the audit committee if they
Okay.
wanna do any kind of check-in with any.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I'm good.
I just want to ensure that the audit committee understands this, they understand.
I brought it up at the last audit committee just to let them know it was coming. So I will make clear what the limitations of this are.
Because it adds a function to their.
It adds a function with a pretty narrow scope.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's gonna be a significant workload. Yeah, I don't see it.
Do you want to go over the other red line again?
I think that's the only one.
No, there were
Coordination.
Two, in coordination with mutual operations.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's right at the top.
So the last one says, in coordination with mutual operations and GRF chief financial officers, the committee shall receive and review periodic updates on the status of mutual audits. So this is just explaining how it'll happen,
How it
including
happens.
adherence to established timelines, audit progress, and any challenges that may impact the completion or quality of the audits. The committee shall serve as a conduit to keep the GRF board informed of such matters and ensure that mutual audit results are communicated in a timely and transparent manner.
Okay, so as far as keeping the GRF board informed, so when we have audit give their report to the GRF board meeting, they could actually say certain mutual audits have not been completed yet. So we could ask them,
Right.
how old is the delay or whatever, anything like that. Okay. Okay. Any comments?
No, seems reasonable.
I think we need a motion for that charter change. If anybody would like to do
The sentence
that.
way up there somewhere. So what, the board has approved this, right? Okay, I make a motion to recommend to the board. What's the header? I make a motion to recommend.
You have to get it right, you have to get it back up, right?
Such a, yeah.
Yeah,
I make a motion to recommend to the board to accept the revised language to the audit committee charter to include monitoring audit timelines and reporting for mutual audits.
I second.
All right, thank you, Vicky. Any further discussion? Majority audit. Roll call, please.
Hamaji,
Yes.
Hines,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
All right, thank you. That concludes our business today. The next meeting will be on Monday, May 12th at 1:30 here in the boardroom. And I'll adjourn at 2:15.
Wow.
Thank you.
Another cookie?